Matt, you are muted.
Good point. That's a good start.
Hello.
Let's do that again. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining this episode of Snyk User Office Hours. I'm Matt Jarvis. I'm Director of Developer Relations at Snyk. And today my accomplices are Eric Smalling, Senior Developer Advocate at Snyk, and Stefan Jordan, who works in our product team on the IaC product. As usual, we're going to be kind of finding our way through some of the Snyk functionality. Lots of things have changed in the infrastructure as code side of things, and Eric and I aren't totally familiar, so we'll be learning with you as we go along. And if you have any questions about what we're doing today or about anything about any of the Snyk products, please do put them into the comments section in YouTube, or I think we're live on Twitch as well, and we'll get to those as well. So please feel free to ask us anything. That's the whole point of today. So infrastructure as code, that's what we're going to be talking about today, right? So perhaps we want to start. There may be people watching who don't really know what infrastructure as code is, right, Eric?
Yeah, so I mean, you have infrastructure. We all grew up with that if you've been in the industry.
You have infrastructure and you have code.
So wow. How do you make it be code? Is that calling to Dell and ordering a PC by API? No.
So I mean, I guess, this stuff's been around for quite a long time now. There's a kind of lineage of how we get to where we are. Normally when we're talking about infrastructure as code, we're talking about API-driven infrastructure, aren't we? And there's lots of ways that we can do that. All of the cloud providers have their own abstraction layers. And then, probably with the thing that most people are going to be more familiar with is probably Terraform, which is another abstraction on top of those abstractions. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, all of these things are a way where we can define infrastructure and it will magically happen for us.
Yeah, I think infrastructure as code really matured when the folks that wrote Terraform, when that got to be hit mass adoption. Because before you had CloudFormation, and that is infrastructure as code, but and every cloud provider was having their own thing, and Terraform really, in my opinion, solidified around the best of all worlds kind of a thing. The other one that's actually is some people will debate whether it's infrastructure as code or not is Kubernetes YAML, because that's at a higher level, but it's still codifying how your application deployments and the ancillary bits of it all come together. So that's another flavor.
And I guess really the root of before we had what we call infrastructure as code. Now these things have a lineage, right, of configuration management, of things like Puppet, like CF Engine for those of us who are on the elderly side, like you and I, Eric. These things haven't appeared out of nowhere. OpenStack Heat was another one. I don't know whether you remember that, where you could define infrastructure you wanted in OpenStack clouds. I'm sure there must be some of those that still exist, right?
But first time I ever ran into the infrastructure as code, and as we're defining it, was I was a developer at a travel company, and our main operations guy left, and all of a sudden we're trying to get things working, and I'm helping out, and password files keep getting overwritten. And we're like, what the heck is going on? And sure, it was CF Engine. I was like, what is a CF Engine? And what does CF stand for? Because it's not exactly what I've always heard CF stands for.
But I mean, before the infrastructure as code movement, it used to take a ridiculously long, even when people had moved to virtual machines, right? It used to take a crazy amount of time for teams to provision stuff. I mean, I can remember friends of mine saying, like, in my company, it takes like 2 months for me to get a VM because it has to go through all these different, the storage guys have to add a LUN to the storage array, and and I guess all of that stuff now is kind of, for most people anyway, is kind of all abstracted away, right? We just in an ideal world, probably the developers who are developing the app are also, at writing whatever deployment code that tells you what infrastructure you need to go along with the app.
Yep. Some questions already popping in here, like, is IaC actual code?
Well, so that's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, it depends. Again, IaC is such a large umbrella term for stuff that, you know, I mean, something like Kubernetes is YAML, right? So you would probably say that's not code as such. It's a form of representing data. But ultimately, the back end, when that gets applied to APIs, you know, there's code running there, and in the case of, I mean, Terraform's kind of the same, isn't it? You have the definition language, which is the HashiCorp configuration language, HCL. Is that what they call it these days?
Yeah, that sounds right.
And then that gets sent to ends up at some point in the cloud API calling, you know, whatever stuff it needs from AWS or Azure or wherever you happen to be targeting. Yeah. But then, I mean, I guess we should also talk about the sort of next generation IaC type things, which do become much more like a language, right? Like Pulumi and you know, who else is there in that space? There's a couple of folks in there where you can actually write that in like Python and stuff like that, right?
Right. I think a lot of it depends on how is it being interpreted, because you could go back, you could say if YAML isn't code, in your opinion, or anyone's opinion, is XML code? Because, I mean, I've seen a ton of code in Maven builds, and is that...
Oh, wow, that's a blast from the past.
That's code to me. Even though we're getting out of the IaC framework there, but
yeah, we've got another question here or comment about being 3,000 line bash scripts and variables. Well, I can remember writing kind of proto infrastructure as code stuff to control virtual machine infrastructure using crazy bash scripts and you know, kind of combinations of Git and all sorts of things to before you had these orchestration systems to be able to do stuff for you. And Gerald's asking, is Pulumi basically an overlay on top of Terraform? I believe so.
Is it on top of Terraform or is it on top of the cloud syntaxes?
One to find out.
I'm woefully inadequate in my Pulumi knowledge. I know what it is, but I have not really.
I think at some point they used Terraform providers to convert some the JS to something actionable. But I don't have any recent experience with Pulumi, so.
Yeah, well, we've got friends at Pulumi, right, Eric? We could do a future Snyk live stream and get some of the Pulumi folks on to talk about Pulumi in the context of security and things. But I guess we digress. We're already 10 minutes in and we haven't done anything yet. Snyk IaC. So where should we start? Should we start? Do you want to start with the CLI, because we always kind of tend to dig into the CLI for these things, right? You're gonna drive this first bit, Eric, are you?
Gerald is on top of the puns.
We're drifting, right? Yeah, nice. Well done.
Okay.
We're going to talk about drift later, by the way, for anybody who doesn't get that in joke. We're going to talk about infrastructure drift, which is one of the issues around infrastructure as code.
Okay. Let me get my screen up here and we can start looking at things. How do I do this? We want this. There we go. So I have, if anyone wants to follow along, this in chat. This is a fork. So let me fix that. Actually, you want the Snyk version if you're gonna.
Yeah. So this is a public GitHub repo. So anybody who's interested can let's just pop that up on screen there as well. So this is just some deliberately kind of, I mean, I guess it's funny, you know, and this is probably something we should touch on, you know, this idea of vulnerabilities in in infrastructure as code. It's kind of different from it's a bit more of a subjective thing than when we talk about vulnerabilities in normal application code, isn't it? Because who is to say that, you know, you didn't want your infrastructure to be like that, right?
Right.
If I introduced like you know, some kind of remote command execution vulnerability or something, there's a very strong likelihood that that was unintentional. Whereas, you know, when infrastructure can be put together in so many different ways that, you know, it becomes a bit more subjective about what things are, whether something is correct or not.
Yeah. And yeah, the word vulnerability is kind of loaded here. I think better word is policy. So is it matching a policy? And we'll get into that as we look into this. But well, I'll tell the folks that own the repository that it needs more storage -1. That's so I've got this already cloned down to my machine. So if let's do well, actually we'll take a look at it.
Should we just are we going to take a quick look in the repository first and see what's actually in there, and then we can look at some of the things that some of the flags we can use for Snyk IaC.
Yeah. So if you're looking at and if you've not seen Terraform before, this is as Matt said, the HCL language for defining your cloud assets, for lack of a better term, in a generic way. And this is requiring AWS. So this one is set up specifically for AWS. And it gives them information. You see a bunch of variables being used. There's a variables file that has stuff in it. My credentials are in my AWS config locally on my machine. Now, I'm not going to get into, you know, we're not going to delve into Terraform Cloud or anything like that. This is all local, everything. So we're going to set up things like an AWS IAM accounts, a VPC, a subnet, storage. You see all these things are modules and resources. So a module this reminds me of Ansible, right? So you have roles, and it's been a while since I've done Ansible, so forgive me if I get my terminology wrong. But in your modules, if you look over here on the left, if you can see that, you can see all the ones you're seeing called out here are in this list. So if we were to say, let's look at the storage one. So we're saying, hey, storage module, set up these variables basically to use it. And when it gets called by convention, main.tf gets called. And it's going to go through here. And this is the declarative state we want the storage related things to be set up as. For instance, we want to have, where's the S3 piece? Here's it. We want an AWS S3 bucket named Snyk Storage to be set up, and there's information we're going to pass into that resource so that the Terraform provider for AWS understands what it is you want done, and so on and so forth. It's kind of a, you know, this hierarchy of take this from variables, and you have default variable values here, and then you have default variable values at the top. The only thing I've changed, by the way, in my version of this is instead of using the word dev in this environmental variable, I'm using smalls because that's what I go by, and that way I know what's mine. So let's scan this before we send this out. Let's see how good or bad this might be. Good or bad being a relative, you know, term. So we do this with Snyk. If you've used Snyk's tools before, it's an npm based CLI. I've already done an npm install of Snyk itself, and if you've used our code scanning, our what do you call it, the SCA, software composition analysis tools, or Snyk code SAST tools, you know, you use Snyk test or Snyk code test. If you use the container scanning, Snyk container test. Well, this case, it's Snyk IaC test. And I'm just going to throw the main Terraform manifest at this, and it's going to drill into it. Oh, live demos, new machine. So we're going to off here. And
this is the point where you don't copy in your your password.
So let's do that again. There we go. So the nice thing about Snyk IaC is that all of the, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Stefan, you might know more about this. I believe it all runs locally. It queries out to the Snyk IaC tool to get policies for your org. If you've set up your free account, if you are a member of an organization, when you can customize those policies to say, I think this is a medium versus a high or whatever. But all of the actual scanning is statically done locally, which makes it nice and quick.
Yeah, you are correct.
Yep, and behind pulling the curtain behind the scenes, it's a Rego based OPA style policy enforcer. So what we see is that in the main TF, we have these issues. Again, we don't use the word vulnerability here because that would be kind of odd. But the policies that it found that it has issue with, the red one obviously is high severity, and then you got mediums at yellow. And high severity in provider introduced by credentials are configured by I'm sorry, it's early for me. I'm still running on cup number 2 here. Credentials are configured via provider attributes, high severity. And it gives a link here to, or a code here that you can go look in details, and we'll look at that in a little bit. Other things, IAM password should contain lowercase, should contain uppercase. So obviously, as we said, this Terraform, this repository is purposefully poorly written, purposely written in ways that should trigger these kinds of things. But our default policies that come with the tool have these levels. I could go into my group and say, oh, well, you know what? All of these password policies should be high, and it would flag them as such here. Or I don't care, mark them low.
It hasn't followed the modules, right? Because you've tested the top level TF file there. So I think what happens if you run it without that argument?
Good question. I think does it traverse the whole thing? I wanted to get a nice
traverse and gives you a
yeah. So by doing that, it tested 26 projects and a lot more verbose. A lot more info here.
It's traversed the tree there.
Yeah, it gets everything.
Yep, and the low ones come up just white.
So why don't we take a look at the help output, Eric, and see what options we get, shall we, for Snyk IaC?
Sure. Add the help up here to the top. Let's see.
So if you run it without the test and just do Snyk IaC help, that'll give us the.
Oh, sure enough.
I think you need minus help there.
Okay. Is that different than?
Yeah. So there you go. Right. So these are your kind of 3 main subcommands there. So test we just talked about. I think we should dig into test in a minute, then describe we're going to come back to in a minute, because that's all about drift detection in your actual deployed cloud infrastructure. And update exclude policy. That's I'm not sure I know what that one does either. So we'll definitely come back to that one. Should we do an IaC test help and see what? See what interesting things there are here. So, bunch of different exit codes. Detection depth, right? So the default is no limit. Wow. So I can imagine that if you've got a lot of nested things, you're going to end up testing a lot of stuff there. So that's going to set how many subdirectories, how many levels of subdirectory. You can set a specific org ID. So if you've got multiple Snyk organizations within your organization, you can set that on the command line. Ignore policies. So we should have a separate office hours, I think, on a .snyk file, because there's lots of stuff you could do in there. to set things that you want to ignore, things that to action, the policy path. That's also to do with the .snyk policy file.
Yep, you got custom policy files by sending a path to them. I knew that.
Yeah, JSON output's not always nice to look at. That's kind of pretty. Do you want to show what the minus JSON? If you just do the minus JSON, the one above that, you'll get a nice, pretty print. If you do that off your main.tf there. So this output is always super useful if you want to do kind of complicated things in your CI/CD pipelines. Being able to output in JSON really gives you all that power of being able to search the output in a programmatic way. So in other contexts, we've talked about being able to filter on specific kinds of vulnerabilities, maybe using the CVSS score. Here, you might want to filter on various things that are set in the output here, but by using JSON and then piping to something like JQ or whatever your JSON processing tool of choice, you get a ton of additional output there that's not shown in the CLI, right?
Yep, absolutely. I mean, things from one of the things I noticed that we include here that we don't in the UI is these documentation links.
Yeah.
Remember I was showing that code that was on the one? If I on my browser, get into a little more detail about what that issue is about and how to resolve it.
Yeah, we see some users who do things like use integrations to automatically create JIRA tickets and stuff like that. So you can filter out that information and use that in another way in order to make that output richer.
Right.
So what else we got, Eric?
Let's see. So we get JSON. Oh, we can output in the serif format, which is like if you're using GitHub Actions and you want to output into the format that it reads for its, normally it's for vulnerability reports, but this would kind of fit into that mold. So that's a standardized format. I forget what serif stands for. It's security related.
Let me Google that for you. You carry on to the next one. Static analysis result interchange format.
There you go. So it's actually not security. It's bigger than security. Let's see, a bunch of project related things. I'm going to gloss over those for now. We might talk about that when we look at the web UI.
If you're interested in the Serif standard there, you can go and dig into that at Oasis.
Nice. Let's see. So you're going to see a lot of things in here that relate to the Snyk app. And what they're talking about is when you set up a free Snyk account, remember when I did the Snyk auth and it went up, depending on if you're on the free tier or one of the paid tiers, you have additional availability or additional things available to you as a paid tier. And reporting is one of those things. Although, I wonder if that's part of the overall reporting, or is this just is this analogous to monitor?
I think that in this context, it's analogous to monitor. Although I don't think it'll obviously not run it on a recurring basis, right? Because it doesn't have actually have access to the code. But what it does is create the entry in the UI.
So with that, come to think of it, so what we're talking about with monitor, if you're not familiar with it, is if I were to do a Snyk monitor, say on a container test, it'll take the bill of materials for that container, store it in Snyk's database, and then daily it'll come back and look for anything new in the vulnerability databases or base image changes, whatever, that would impact it, and let you know, hey, that image you monitored 3 days ago, even though you haven't been giving us, it's not been changed, it's now more vulnerable because of this. I'm assuming that that's what this means, is that it's going to take the statistics about this scan we locally did, pipe it up to your account at Snyk, the bill of materials, if you will, I guess, kind of a weird way to look at it. And then if policies change, will it let you know? Is that what this will do? I wonder.
That's an interesting question. I don't know the answer to that.
No, I think the dash report is basically pushing the results from your local. It's basically what you got from the CLI output here, and it's to share directly in your project on the Snyk platform.
Okay.
So it's basically getting the results you have locally on the UI.
All right. So like CI, if it was doing this as a CI build step, it would say, okay, and here and report that.
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah. That's also why it's not named. It's kind of a different feature from the monitor feature. It's more like a reporting feature.
That makes sense. You can say, again, we use the word vulnerabilities here, but severity threat. I think this is a general option available in many different tests. That's why it uses that term. But you can say only report things of at whatever level you want. Or higher. So if we said medium, you get anything medium, higher, critical.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things in there about custom rules, and I think we probably won't have time in this session to cover custom rules, judging from how long what time we're at the minute. Because we do want to talk about drift in this session, but I think what we'll do is have a separate office hours that's just about custom rules. So
yeah.
Just to give people the flavor of what custom rules is. So you can define your own custom policies using Rego, but there's also a whole SDK that makes it a lot easier than you having to write Rego straight off the bat. And the SDK supports testing of the rules and generating templates and a whole bunch of cool stuff. And so you could basically set up things that are outside of our rule set. There's things that are specific to your organization. So, for example, one of the in the docs we have the example of failing on anything that doesn't have a label, where we've got an owner for that particular resource, which would be a very common use case. You want to make sure that there's some way of actually auditing who's created what within your infrastructure as code. It's very good practice to have something that would assign that. So the example in the documentation is to create a custom rule, which is going to fail if you haven't set that. So I think we'll probably get to a separate session on that.
Yep.
So these minus scan ones were interesting to me, because I thought this was new from the last time I looked at the output of the CLI. So this is this sets how the scan how it's going to the different mode for scanning, right?
Sorry, I was taking a drink as you said that. Yeah, so it's going to control whether scan analyze the full final state or the proposed changes only.
Is it different? It's about scanning the different areas, the different structures in the Terraform plan. So you can either scan the whole Terraform plan or just what is being changed in the next run. So it depends on your pipeline, the type of results you want, whether it's about blocking something that will change, or if you want like a complete scan of your infrastructure as code.
All right, this reminds me. So in the container scanner, we have the ability to say ignore base image vulns. So you can say, I only care about what I've done to this image in my Docker file, not what I'm based on, because that's my other team's issues, right? So this is
you assume a certain state was okay because it happened before this particular change,
right?
And all I'm interested in is what happened in this particular change.
Yeah. Interesting.
That's, can we try that and see what the output is, Eric?
Well, I haven't deployed yet, so I don't know that's.
I think isn't there a plan output in that?
Sorry, that's a good question. I might have blown it away if there was.
Okay. I thought maybe there was in that test repository.
Yeah. It's plan. So now do we have the outputs?
You probably need to export your Terraform plan to a file that can be then scanned.
So out. Is there a syntax I need to use for that file name, or just does it care?
It's a good question. TF plan. Probably it's TF plan, I think.
Okay.
Dot TF plan, sorry.
Oh,
the extension.
So out dot TF plan. Call it that. Or is it just dot TF plan?
No, it can be file name dot TF plan. I think it's the extension.
Okay. Okay. So now
you probably can scan your plan.
And do I don't remember. Did it say? Shoot.
It's minus scan equals something, wasn't it? I've got the docs here.
It's proposed changes or something. Yeah, plan values or.
I mean, I'm guessing in this case we're going to get the same output as we had from scanning the Terraform anyway, because everything's changed, right?
In this case, yes.
How do I tell it that that out file is what I want to use?
Probably as an argument.
Test, right? Test scan.
Right, and see what moans.
Huh? Scroll the top of this. Okay.
Yeah, it's back. It falls back to testing the Terraform files. Maybe you can try by adding
I
the
think
file
you've got to specify the plan file rather than the so like that,
Invalid infrastructure.
Okay. Right. So if you rename it to .json, I think you'll
based on what's the format of this file? Binary.
Oh, interesting.
Oh yeah, you have to export. Definitely, that's right. You have to export the Terraform plan to JSON. That JSON can be analyzed then. That's the way it works.
What's the export? How do we do that?
I am Googling it for you right now.
Matt's middle name is Stack Overflow.
Terraform plan output to JSON. You do Terraform show with the plan name minus JSON and then output it to a file.
Minus or minus?
I think it's just minus. Terraform show minus JSON. And then pipe that somewhere. You need a
redirect. Yeah.
I do Linux.
You've only had 20 plus years experience of the Linux online. You can't be expected to know these things.
That looks like JSON to me. So now
JSON to me as well.
Up to this. Hey, that looks better.
Cool.
So
that's fit for everything now, because obviously the plan contains
everything we don't have anything
that was going to be deployed when you deployed that top level main.tf. So
and go ahead and deploy it.
Oh, we're going for it, are we?
Go for it.
Deploying. Well, that'd be a good segue into Drift then, wouldn't it?
It is. Yeah, we are. Wow, 36 minutes in. Yeah.
Yeah. These sessions go quick.
Yeah, that's my excuse right there. All my expensive PowerShell. You know what I love about PowerShell is how verbose it is. You can read it's like a novel.
I have to admit, I've the last time I used Windows was about just after NT4, I think. So
creating prohibited field resource. Uh-oh.
Oh, okay.
Line 8 of IAM main TF.
Is that's maybe a policy that's set in our AWS environment, right?
Could be.
Because you're trying to create an admin role.
That wouldn't surprise me. I'm in our DevRel marketing account, and they may have that locked down.
Do we need that in order to test this? We don't need. Do we actually need any of the IAM stuff? So while you fiddle with that, Eric, Stefan, do you want to talk to us a bit about Drift and why people should care?
Yeah. So yeah, once so yeah, as you mentioned, now we have automated all of our infrastructure. It's all in code, it's all in Terraform, and basically either you don't want anything else to be done manually in your cloud infrastructures, or you want to slowly cover more of your cloud account into Terraform. So either you're getting started or you're at the end of your journey. You still want to detect what's not under control, in our case under Terraform control. And if you did things quite correctly, quite the way it's expected, you will end up with a ton of different Terraform files and Terraform states. And the idea here is to acknowledge that one single AWS account can be comprised of many Git repos containing many modules and Terraform files, etc. But in the end, it's also probably dozens of states. So probably you have your VPC states, probably you have your S3 states, etc. And all of them can be aggregated and make sense for the totality of your AWS account. And in the end, your goal is to have something close to 100% coverage, like in regular software engineering, you want the best coverage possible for your code. So that's why we created this Drift feature here. It's to help users, customers, to have more visibility on their cloud infrastructures, because visibility is key in our case. Because how do you want to? With Snyk IaC, we can analyze, we can get some feedback about the severity of the configuration we have, like is this S3 bucket encrypted, for example, but that's the intention. What about things that were created manually? You still don't know about them, and you want to know about them, and you want to bring them back into control into your code. That's what you want to do. We want to create that full feedback from the purely offline analysis that we do with Snyk IaC. And we want to connect this with the cloud account, the reality, and bring it back to code. That's the first step for this full story here.
Yeah, that's it. And I guess as bigger organizations take on this challenge of infrastructure as code, that becomes a more and more, n times problem, because everything, the complexity of everything increases exponentially with lots and lots of different groups deploying things using Terraform or whatever.
Yeah.
So Eric, how are we doing with getting some stuff that we can actually try?
Working on it.
Okay.
Let's see, I'm just going to try commenting out the IAM section and see if just get away without having it. Not directly referring to it anyway. That was a long shot. Oh wait, actually, because I had gone back to using the default environment name. Let me put this back to my own. See if that works.
Nice.
Thinking about it. We're down to one error. Let me create a calling. So is there a way to specify availability zone? Oh, it must be specifying variables. Actually, let's just search for that. It's specifying US 1C.
Oh, you just need to change that to 1A or 1B, right?
Not specifying it. I think that's just what's getting chosen for me. Oops. Where is that being set?
It's probably in that in the VPC module there, is it? And you've got variables.
You know what? It's saying US West, but I think I'm in US East. No, never mind. US West. That variables. Yeah, there it is. So there's the region. Can I add the availability zone to that?
Maybe.
It doesn't seem right because it's. Yeah. That makes sense. I wonder though if where is that getting used? Back. Main AWS region. I wonder if. Hold on. Need to look at the provider. Not a resource, is it?
Well, you can see, folks, this is definitely live.
I'm just going to YOLO it and say availability zone. And I know this is not the way you would do this. Let's just see if that actually technically. I'm going to have to look up the AWS provider.
AWS _ availability _ zone.
Okay.
I think.
Give that a shot.
If you want, I can show some drift detection in Snyk IaC in the meantime.
Yeah, perfect. That's exactly what we're trying to get to. So.
That can be.
Before we spend the whole rest of the session trying to get AWS to work. So if you want to share your screen,
exactly,
so get you on there.
So is this? Oh, I don't have the rights for Chrome. Oh my God. Not for StreamYard. Okay. What else can I do? Only a window. Would it work? No.
Is it a Chrome permissions thing?
Yeah, I didn't. But that's weird. It's granted for Chrome already. Oh my God. The demo effect. Yeah, it's already granted for Chrome. I don't get it. If already checked, uncheck and recheck it. Oh my god, that's help.
I actually had this yesterday in a stream where I suddenly realized my Chrome permissions had changed themselves.
All right. So is it going to work with a terminal? No. Well, I will have to restart Chrome. So
Okay, are you gonna? That means you'll have to drop off and come back on, I think.
Yeah, I think I will have to do it.
Okay. Well, we'll see you in a second.
I'm back in 1 minute.
I may have found my problem.
Oh yeah.
We have a hard-coded C right there.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to try changing that to A and see what we get. What does that mean? Current AZ coverage.
Sorry, folks. We should have tested this.
Yeah, I did a plan test. I didn't do an applied test.
This code live. So what's that? It does not cover enough AZs.
Add subnets to cover at least 2 AZs. Oh, this is actually, this is a different one. This is storage, the database. But I think it's referring to the subnet group. So,
right, we've got Stefan again.
Yeah.
How's it looking?
Yeah, seems look like it's better. Let me share my screen.
Yay, there we go. Saved. Saved by the bell. Right.
All right. So we have here. So this is a very simple. Here Terraform file with some just basic access key and simple attachments. So we have a username, user1, with a random string here to make it unique for demos, and this user has a read-only access policy attached to it. So it's very basic, and Terraform. Let's Terraform apply it, and yeah, obviously, just to make sure we are in sync. And the idea here is to show how it would look like. So yeah, the proof is that the Terraform is applied correctly here. And if we use the Snyk IaC describe, so Snyk IaC describe is the drift detection integrated into Snyk IaC with the unmanaged option. It means that we want to detect any resource that is not managed by Terraform in my cloud account. So we see at the first part of the command line here that I'm being authenticated on AWS using AWS Vault. Your case might be different. You can use AWS profiles, you can use variables, etc. And in this case, I'm asking Snyk IaC to report me all the resources that are not under Terraform control based on the Terraform state it found locally. And here it finds no unmanaged resources. The coverage is 100%. That's why we Terraform applied just before and no change were detected. So let's make a change now so we can detect it. And we said that user 1 was the one being managed in this Terraform state here. And let's do something like terrible. Let's add some administrative access here manually. It's a very bad drift. And let's create an access key manually. It's terrible. What it means now, what we just did on the AWS account is we created a user with an access key that is not managed by Terraform, and this user is now an administrator. Do you think Terraform will see it? The answer is no, because it's not meant for it. Those are all attachments here, so it's not meant to see the attachment. It's a deployment process. It's not about like seeing things like this. So if your process includes in your pipelines Terraform planning things or Terraform applying things, it's not meant for that. It's a great tool, but it's not meant for that. That's the reason why we created Snyk IaC describe, drift detection here, and in this case, Snyk IaC will report to you in Terraform terms the Terraform resources that we just created manually. So here we can see that we have an IAM access key in Terraform terms. Here we have the ID and we have the attachment for this user. Remember, it's user one, blah, blah, blah. And we created this administrative access. Our coverage was 100%, and now it's down to 66%. The idea here is to help the developer know about it. Like if you had this in a, I don't know, a cron job or whatever, we can basically, it will return 1. It's a problem, and it's ordered by services. You can check things like, I don't know, any service that it's important for you, and you can fix this. So in this case, you can basically go remove the administrative access, and maybe you want to integrate the access key or something like this. That's the kind of things you can do with drift detection and Snyk IaC.
That's super cool. I mean, that's an interesting example as well, isn't it? Because, you know, it'd be quite easy for someone who perhaps wasn't super familiar with Terraform to think that, oh, well, I've defined this user with these permissions. Therefore, if Terraform, when you do if you change that manually and then you do Terraform apply, you're thinking, well, I'm just going to get that user with that permission again. But that's not the way Terraform works,
Exactly.
Is it, in that case, because those permissions are additive. So even Terraform just goes, oh, well, that user exists and it has the permission I wanted it to have. I don't care what other permissions it's got, because you know, all I'm interested in is what's defined in your Terraform and making sure that the real world conforms to that. Anything else is, you know, above and beyond my pay grade.
Yeah, exactly. And it's pretty much the same with API gateway path, for example. You can have this with the security group rules as well. Everything that is basically an attachment or is not locally defined and exactly managed by, in this case, Terraform. So you can end up with a path in API gateway just working in production because someone added it manually, configured some error code, whatever. It's working, and you pretty much expect it to be okay, which is not the reality. It's not under control of Terraform. And Snyk IaC describe in this case will report it to you, and for us as developers, it will be directly in as a Terraform resource name. It's not just about like, hey, you have this path in API gateway. It will be the exact name with the exact ID, and it will be very easy for you to remediate quickly in your ID and improve your coverage here. You can track your coverage pretty easily as well. So,
I mean, how do in the real world of customer usage, how do we see people kind of tending to use Drift? Are they using it in CI pipelines, or are they using it in you know, as a way of alerting? You know, what's the kind of typical use case?
Yeah, great question. We have 2 major use cases that we identified. The first one is really on a laptop for the developer. It's used as a audit tool. Like they get started, they want to know, they want clarity on what's deployed on the cloud accounts, the different regions, etc. And it's about discovery. It's about getting started, improving the coverage, etc. That's the main use case for the developer on the laptop. The second use case is for people when they got to some level of coverage, they put this in a cron job. Not really in pipelines directly because it can block, it can be complicated. It's some edge cases today. But yeah, cron jobs to get some notification on something changed on this specific service that I'm interested in, like IAM, VPCs, security groups, things like this. That's the major use cases we see.
And is there any configurable policy kind of stuff on kind of ignores or anything you can do with describe, or is it?
Yes, and it's I remember when you read the --help, you found a exclude policy subcommand, and this is to update the .snyk for Drift. So it's a way to help users onboard earlier, because the reality out there is that people rarely go to 100% coverage in a few days, so it takes a while. But still, we want to help them. So you can add to the .snyk policy file a bunch of ignores for all the resources that are found on your cloud provider, AWS, GCP, Azure, and it helps you get started quickly. So yes, you may still have 100 resources not yet in Terraform, but now you will be clean. You kind of create a baseline here, and you can have this regular check on the cron job and get this message on, I don't know, this email, this Slack notification or whatever, if someone creates something manually. So you get the value immediately while still on your way to automate and integrate, import your resources in Terraform. So yeah. Also, for free, you get the list of your next steps to do things. So.
And Drift's available to all Snyk users, right? It's
yes,
free. It's available in the free tier, as well as in the paid tiers.
Yes, and a ton of new features on top of this will soon be released. So stay tuned. It's super exciting.
Absolutely. We'll revisit these. All of the Snyk products move so fast that by the time we've done one of these, it's basically out of date, and we have to do another one. So we'll definitely come back and do another one on Drift at some point in the future. I know we've got lots of interesting things coming up later in the year around cloud posture management as well, which also kind of links into all this stuff. So we're about coming up to the hour, Eric. Do you want to do have a quick show of what the UI looks like for IaC before we wrap up the show?
Well, it's like you can almost see my screen, what I was going to show. By the way, I did get it working. There was a second subnet above it. I wasn't looking up, and I had A and A. So, but hey.
Right, well, we go back to the start, Eric, and just do the whole show again, shall we?
No, let's do another hour. So this is the web UI. I've drilled down into one of the Terraform scripts just for to be quick here. This is the storage one. Similar to what we saw in the CLI, you're seeing the same kind of list of issues. And I've clicked details on this first one. So it's showing in context with the file, the same kind of info with a little bit more friendly, I guess, interface. You can also see that we're ignoring three things. If I turn on this toggle to see ignored items, you can see that we are ignoring this. And the reason somebody put when they ignored it was to show an example of ignoring something. But you can imagine, so let's say, for instance, for some reason, this rule, you had mitigating controls elsewhere. And you could declare that. You could say, ignore this, and here's why. And you can set an expiration. Now, this is set way out in the future, but for instance, if this was ignore this because we are going to be moving over to this by a certain date, that ignore would expire and would start alerting again if you didn't resolve it by then. So things like that. And of course, all of these levels can be customized. You can go in your settings and say, hey, this should actually be a medium, or hey, this medium should be a high. I would probably make that a high. You should always be using encryption everywhere. And anyway, so this is what it looks like. We're at time though. I can't go.
Yeah, I mean, I was just one last comment was that what I really like in IaC is that in lots of these will actually tell you how to fix it, what that setting should be in order to and that's the same for the Kubernetes stuff as well. So, well, I think we're definitely due another session on this. I always underestimate how long it takes us to get through this stuff. I know with every office hours that we've done around a particular feature, we could have done 2 hours on it. So we'll definitely revisit IaC in the future. Thank you to everybody who's watched the stream. You can also obviously catch up on YouTube afterwards. Feel free to reach out to Eric or I at any point. Our Twitter handles are both there. If you've got any other questions, thank you to Stefan for joining us. It's been fantastic to explore Drift. Thank you, Eric, for your sterling keyboarding. It's an honor to work with you every time. And yeah, that's about it, folks. See you on the next one.
Bye.